Hi there, Michaela Lanning here. I have been thinking a lot lately about therapist blind spots that counselors have. And I've been thinking about it from both the client chair and from the person that likes to help people chair, and really thinking about like how often is it that that as a therapist, like I sit with people and I form an idea that just isn't actually what's going on for them, or like it misses a really important point. And I've been thinking about this lately, particularly as I've been learning another modality, and actually had a conversation with somebody about how the modality itself can actually lead to new blind spots that we didn't actually have to begin with. So great modality, right? Where do I sign up? It's got enough really great stuff, but it's the recent thing I'm learning is really focused on helping clients to feel empowered and helping them to realize where this is Princess, by the way, helping the client to realize like where they put up barriers to connection, like where there's something in the way of them seeing kind of the full truth of their life, or the full truth of maybe where relationships go off the skids. And so it's tremendously, tremendously useful if you're somebody who is walking through the world and, like most of us, you have blind spots and you don't see them. Or if you're somebody who's been in a lot of therapy, a lot of coaching, and in fact, nobody's actually addressed some of the ways that you might accidentally be disconnecting from that relationship, or disconnecting from what your own goals are, like maybe trying to please the person that you're working with, or ways that, you know, some of us learn to devalue other people. We critique what they're doing, but it's actually a way to keep from getting close, or we critique that they're not giving us enough, and that becomes another way to be blocked from taking in what's there. So all really, really great things. And there is a real risk for counselors and clients both, I think, to actually sitting together and trying to explore, you know, what we might call a defense, or to explore what might be a blind spot, and to actually lose track of the fact that there are so many really precious, really important pieces of history that go into the defenses that we all create, right? Like we all have barriers to connection. And if you have somebody who's just sitting there saying, hey, you're putting up a barrier, and they make it sound like there isn't a ton of nuance around that, or a ton of compassion called for too, it can feel like a real disconnect. The other example I've seen is like maybe if I see somebody in this modality and I'm telling a story that's really important for giving context to the symptom I'm experiencing, right? So I've been reading transcripts of this therapy, and if I were seeing one of these therapists, one thing they might do is say, "Do you see how you're going over to a story again? Do you see how you're sharing history, and it's actually taking you from here now with me?" Now, cool if the person is giving history that's actually taking away from the moment, and they're doing that perpetually. Let's say every time you're about to tear up, you think of another story and it actually brings you out of those tears, or every time you start to tense up, get angry, and mobilize, you go to a story, and now you're thinking about, rather than experiencing something here that can shift. So sure, stories can be diversions, and if your stories to your counselor are getting cut off, and I want to be really clear, I'm not just talking this recent modality that I'm learning. I'm talking any therapist or any human anytime can really miss the point of what somebody else is saying. And the fascinating thing about counseling, like connections coaching, is that what we're actually working to do is to work explicitly on connecting. It's kind of like practice for having a genuine, authentic relationship. And of course, there are things that your counselor won't and shouldn't share, but hopefully they're sitting genuinely with you in some way that helps you to get a sense of what it is to be genuinely with yourself. And so sometimes that involves difficult conversations. Sometimes they'll challenge you in ways that nobody else in your life has felt comfortable doing. But the problem comes in when they have a blind spot, when when they've like labeled up and boxed one of your behaviors and gone, oh, I know what that is. Like you're telling a story and it's taken from the connection, and so we're just gonna box that story, tape up that box, and put it over here. That's not super respectful, because the story is often really important. And I think one thing that happens, especially with like complicated people, I consider myself kind of a complex person. Like there are often layers to what I'm saying. I work with a lot of clients like that too. There are layers to what they're saying, and so it would be really sad if somebody said something really important and I were to label it as a defense when it is a defense, and also there's important information embedded there. So I was looking up when your therapist is wrong in YouTube searches, and sadly, one of the most common results that I saw for the search is when your therapist gaslights you. Now, therapists are in an unusual position to be able to do this because they're still perceived as authority figures. There's still this idea that they have expertise into who we are, that we ourselves don't have, and that can become really dangerous. That can become really very problematic, because if you go to a counselor with, say that you have a history of domestic violence, say that you've been in a relationship where somebody mistreated you, and say that the counselor has a huge focus on personal responsibility, and they don't listen to what happened with that person, or they say, well, that may have been, but also, and now we're getting into blaming people who've been through really difficult things, which is very, very different from having a conversation down the line where the client might have curiosity and go, why is it that I keep being drawn to these relationships? Like, why do I keep looking for people who most certainly won't return my phone calls or texts, or who most certainly will have a desire of their own that's really driving the relationship? And then we can do an exploration. But if you're saying, gosh, I was just in a really hurtful relationship, whether you were hurt, like physically hurt, or whether it's like, I feel devastated, I feel heartbroken, I feel betrayed, and if you get your reality rewritten, that's gaslighting, it's invalidating, and so it's so important to be able to look for the truth of who we are. And I think in any good counseling relationship, we're going to discover things about ourselves that aren't always pretty, that aren't always fun to look at, that aren't great to acknowledge. And so if you have a therapist who everything they say makes you feel warm, safe, happy, cocooned, good, and agreed with, you might not be making the changes in your life that you want to make, because they're just kind of happily rolling along with your blind spots, and now you're together not seeing things, and that's tricky too. And that kind of passes on a different message to some people too, of like, if I'm super warm with you and with everything that you do, and other people in your life have tiptoed around telling you the truth around some of your behaviors or some of the ways that you communicate that maybe aren't so effective, you can get the sense of like, oh, I'm too fragile. I'm too fragile for people to level with me. Or like, my counselor doesn't think I can really improve. And how do I know that? I know that because they don't challenge me ever. They must not think I can be challenged. So with counseling relationships, there's this sweet spot where you feel understood and you feel met, but there's also enough discomfort. There's enough challenge, there is enough being encouraged to look at something differently, that you can really do that you can really explore something meaningful about yourself, something that you didn't know before, and it can open up choices, and it can open up some pain that needs to be processed. But if you're sitting with your counselor and you're feeling bewildered and you're feeling misunderstood and you're feeling invalidated, and it's not you're not moving past that point, I definitely suggest a conversation with them. And like, don't try to fit yourself to the mold of what somebody is telling you that you are. Like counselors, I mean, we have all kinds of different trainings, and honestly, any training can just as easily become just one of our sanctioned blind spots, where it's like, oh, I'm seeing your behavior through this modality now, or oh, well, I'm trained in body tracking and I'm seeing your body do this and I'm focusing on that and I'm actually missing something about you underneath. So if your therapist is missing the point, or if you're feeling misunderstood, remember that we're wrong too. Some of the time, and that part of the value in counseling is being able to find your authentic voice, being able to even find like anger, irritation, being able to say, look, I hear what you're saying and I cannot get it to fit inside with just my heartfelt truth is not that this is my, I'm not intending to do this thing that you're saying, or, you're saying that I'm putting up a wall, and actually my experience is I'm telling a really important story that's going to connect back to the emotion. And then maybe that gives room to get curious about, if your therapists have never been able to hear your stories in a way that's meaningful for you, then it may be that you're bringing something genuine and there's something in the communication like it's getting lost. And then what an opportunity that is. If your counselor can help you see, so you're telling a story and somehow I'm getting lost in like a lot of details that you're telling, but is there something important here? And is there some way that we can work with you telling this so that I can actually feel it, so I can be right here with you? Um, because that's the other thing. Like therapists can say what the client is doing is a detour from connection, but connection takes two. Connection is a dance, and a therapist naming your detours from connection can be a detour from connecting with you too. And so, to me, it's really important to keep connection alive, to keep kind of, I've heard an analogy of like imagining kind of like a thread between me and the client. We're both hanging on to a part, we're both tugging, and we're both feeling that contact, we're both feeling that resonance and that connection. And that's true even, even in difficult moments. Or then I'm saying, gosh, we're holding on to this connection. I notice it feels like you just dropped your side of the rope, it feels like you withdrew, it feels like you gave up on feeling understood right there. Or it feels like there are a lot of words getting in the way of kind of feeling what's happening here. Could we look at that? So it's just super important to remember that these are relationships. These are relationships. I mean, you're paying money, and you're paying money to see somebody and to hopefully feel understood. And misunderstandings are inevitable. If your therapist is misunderstanding you over and over and over again, if you try to clarify where you're coming from and they actually tell you that you don't know where you're coming from, those are bad signs. So obviously you wouldn't want to stick with somebody like that. But if you're with somebody who is missing the point some of the time, recently learned a new modality, is working to fit some theories together, I mean, I'll just say I've been really in a really fortunate spot to be able to learn some new things, to be able to call clients in a little bit differently to looking at behaviors. And I think the reason that is because I've had relationships with people. The challenges actually feel good when they're attuned, and we're really able to talk and sort it out. And I'm able to see it when it's like there's something that I'm bringing in that isn't quite catching the whole point. It's, to me, really fundamental to work with somebody who's both able to challenge you and who is able to notice when the challenges aren't landing in a good place, aren't leading to growth, aren't leading to new realization, or are leading you to feeling not just misunderstood for a moment or a day, but like really kind of globally misunderstood. You want to be waking up more over time in your therapy. You want to be accessing more of your feelings, more of your reality, more of your ability to connect. And in my experience, a challenge can, for a moment, make me feel pulled back, or make me feel like if I'm the challengee, they can make me feel a little bit stung or a little bit rejected. And if it's good, it'll keep rolling around in my mind. And if the relationship is good, I'll keep feeling that foundational sense of somebody who cares about me, who's actually calling for me in that challenge, you know? Like if you've got a wall up and somebody says, "Hey, it looks like there's a wall," or better analogy, maybe like you've got a locked door. And the therapist is on the other side saying, "Hey, I mean, you're saying hello there. It's nice to see you, but the door is locked. Do you notice that? Like, there's a door between us, it's kind of hard to hear you or see you." That's going to feel good on some level. It's going to feel irritating if you're used to keeping the door locked and you're used to having people just yell out through a window or pretend that you're not hiding. But if you're doing everything in your power to open the door and it won't open, it won't budge, there's something heavy there, it's really, really important to be able to communicate that and to have your therapist move away from this position of, yeah, well, the door's locked, you can't open it. You know, like we can get kind of sassy and we can get kind of entrenched and we can get unhelpful. So hopefully you've got somebody who really, really cares about you and really cares about the relationship and is able to see things, to visit things, to understand the difference between you've deliberately locked the door or you are trying to unjam the dang lock, or you have unjammed the lock, but it's hard to open it, or you don't, you're afraid. Um, of the connection on the other side of that door, and then there's something else that you can look at together. So wow, I talked for a while. I hope this is helpful though. All the search results I saw in this actually went straight to signs of bad therapists, and this was interesting because I was actually looking at situations with therapists that I've seen that are really good, therapists I've been communicating with who are skillful and who are aware that we can just get it wrong. And I think some of the more skillful people are aware that there are blind spots and ways to get it wrong. So I'd be happy to do another video on signs of a bad counselor, or something. But it looks to me like there just isn't a lot of material out on like when it's a kind, smart, well-meaning person who's also missing a point for a minute or a week or something. So and I think it's important to be able to differentiate those and to really learn how to navigate like a human, genuine, authentic relationship, and rather than going straight to like, ah, it's great, it's bad, it's terrible, it's, delightful. It's like, not so binary as that. And I hope this is helpful in just hearing some of one counselor's thoughts on where we can get it wrong and how clients and us together can really work to sit together, see each other, hear things different ways, different times, and really, really just get it right over time. Thank you, and I look forward to talking with you soon.